Kreisel and welcome, Bill Taylor Beales here, and this is the Portraiture Masterclass. Today we're going to be looking at how to take a photograph, or for live sitting if you've got that, and turn it into a beautiful pencil drawing. This is one of mine. This is Paddy Smith, which is an ink wash on canvas. I've been an artist now for about 30 years, working in schools and prisons and hospices and community groups, using film, music, all kinds of media. I keep coming back to portraiture. I love portraiture and finding out how different ways to bring a face to life and using this in my workshops. We're going to take Patty down and we're going to bring in our green screen and turn my humble working drawing board into a bit of live TV there. This is where I work, this is where I do my drawings. I run an online business and people send me photographs and I translate them into pencil or pastel or ink drawings. So this is a few more examples of my work. There's some digital work here, some photography with mixed media, there's some graphic novel, there's some album art, and there's some paintings as well. I work in all different kinds of media and I love bringing those media together and experimenting. But today we're going to be doing a portrait together. So the first thing you're going to need is your subject. Someone's going to sit for you, maybe somebody in the home. And ideally if they can sit for a little bit, that'll be great, but most likely you'll be taking a photograph. So with a photograph, we're going to use a method called chiaroscuro, which is Italian and it means light and dark. And what we're going to do is use a strong light source to cast shadows on the face, which is going to help us bring that face to life and make it very sculptural. So if you can, take your subject, the person you're going to be drawing, stand them near a window or a standard lamp or spotlight, whatever you have in your home, and to create a strong sense of light from one side. If you can have a little reflected light on the other, maybe ask someone to hold up a white sheet or something so you get a bit reflected light, just a little bit, that helps to bring the whole face alive. So you got your subject, lighting, and you got a photograph. This morning I was photographing my daughter in the same situation in the studio, set up a light, reflected light, and took a photo. I'm going to take that photo, which is a colour photo, I'm going to take it into a black and white state. The black and white is really helpful because it just brings us tonal values rather than colour, makes it easier to interpret. So we've got our photograph that we're going to work from. What we're going to use to draw with? Well, today we're going to use the humble pencil. We're going to look at using B to 8B, is what I have here. If you have HB pencils, fine, we can make a nice drawing with that. They are the kind of the hardest pencil we would want to use. They're very hard and they will, if you press too hard, damage the paper and make it shiny. So the softer the pencil, the better. So the 2B, 3B, 4B, the B stands for softness, and so the higher the number, the softer the pencil. Okay, so if you can get your hand on some of those B pencils, that'll be fantastic. The paper we're going to be using, if I was using normally in the workplace, I'll be using a smooth, heavy-duty cartridge paper, and that's because the cartridge paper has very strong dips or pores in the paper, and that helps the pencil. When you use the pencil and take the pencil and take it across the surface, it actually kind of takes off the very fine silicon layers of the pencil and creates the mark. And so that kind of sinks into the dips in the paper, the little pores you can see here, these kind of ridges coming along, it sinks into them. And if you gently rub along there with a pencil on the side, it fills up those pores and you get darker and darker. If you press too hard, like you see here, then you actually flatten the paper and you stop it being able to take in more graphite. And that gives you that shiny effect which we're trying to avoid. When you look at a pencil drawing and you see it's kind of, you move it and it shines, and it's hard to look at. So we're going to try very carefully with our pencils not to have that shiny effect and just very lightly bring in the intensity. So we're going to look at using a piece of just average photocopier paper today. Okay, so that's probably what you have lying around. Hopefully it might pick it up at the local shops when someone goes and does that run. Okay, so we've got our subject matter, we've got our tools. We need to learn how to use our tools on the paper. Normally when we're drawing a pencil and writing, we hold our pencil and we dig in with a point there. What we'd like to do today is to hold the pencil in the flat of our hand like this, and then just gently hold it against the paper and just really explore some mark making. fast lines, slow lines, quick lines, and kind of pushing a little bit harder and lifting up a bit, and just see what you can actually get with this, so that the line on your drawing isn't just the same line all the time, that you have different marks that you can bring out and make the face look really interesting. You can use pastels, or you can use inks. We can use a pencil today for this illustration. Tonal value is really important, and so if we think of our tonal value and our shading, we're going to go from 1, which is none, white, the paper that's white, through to a 5, which is the darkest going to go, and in between that will be grades of shading. As you can see here, we can do that with cross-hatching. We can go one way, across the other way, horizontal, vertical, and build up that depth, or just by applying layer upon layer of shading and getting darker and darker each time. And if we think about the face in those 5 tones, those 5 tonal values, it's easier then to think where we're going to map it out. And mapping is a key word. We're going to map the face out. So as we approach the drawing, we are going to look at gridding up as one method to transfer the lines from the photo into the finished drawing. And the other one is going to be looking at mapping, which is what I do. So we take a line and you just very carefully take one point to another point across that, and I'll explain that as we do it shortly. So after this, I'm going to switch across to a different camera above here. So it'll be photographing from above. You'll see my hand moving and the photo and the piece of paper that we're working on. And at the end, I'll speed up the last part so that you can see to the finished drawing. On average, if I was going to do a portrait for a commission, for an A4, A3 pencil sketch, that would probably take me 2 hours. So if we're looking at anywhere between half an hour to 2 hours to do a drawing, and that's great. With the photocopier paper, there is a limit to how much actual kind of graphite you can put on there before it does become too shiny. So the big cartridge paper can take more and you can work it for longer. Okay, I'll see you on the board. Thank you. So you need somewhere to draw. Ideally a nice flat surface in an undisturbed part of the house or the building that you're in. Your paper, when you're working on a desk, needs not to be flat, because as you're looking down on it, you'll get a distortion. This will be smaller than this as far as when you're looking at it, and it'll affect your drawing. So ideally you want to find a board or a large book or a tray or something that you can put your paper on and your drawing, and you can raise this angle. Now you can use some big heavy books to stick behind there and raise it up so that you're working at an angle of about 30 to 60 degrees. The drawing board I use is right up here with 60 degrees. I find that most comfortable. But adjust it so it feels comfortable. Your arm can rest there, and your eyes are looking at the board then, and this distance will be the same distance for your eye. So there won't be any foreshortening or distortion. Okay, so off to the drawing board. Welcome to the board, the drawing board. As you see, I've set up the photo. So the photo I took this morning, I've changed into a black and white, and thankfully most of the, if you take it on a smartphone, they have filters that you can put on. So the black and white will give you a ready-made tonal quality. So not looking at colours, it's just looking from light to dark. And I've gridded this one up, so it's literally half again and half again until you get into these small quarters here, and then we transfer those same measurements to the paper. Very light, thin pencil lines which you can rub out later on. This is a method that's been used for centuries, and it helps to transform, if you can scale up. So if it's a small picture to a large picture, the scaling will work the same. So it's very useful for big paintings, and I use it for big paintings a lot. And basically all you do is just a grid reference. So you look at this grid reference here and you match up the line, it comes around to this ear, you go down here, look for another one. Okay, so the nose here is a good one. So we've got the nose here, the nostril comes just below here. I'm going to draw that down there. That side of the nostril happens just on that line here. So we know that you can put a mark there. And what I'm doing is just little marks, little dots and dashes. That comes here. So I'm not committing myself, so the lips are just here, to any one particular mark or line until I'm convinced So this shadow cuts through here till I'm convinced that the line I'm doing is actually in the right place. Okay, so this little map making marks. So the bottom of the lip is just here and there. So the bottom of the lip comes just here. The chin, the bottom of the chin is just above that mark there. So here. As you see, I just keep moving around, finding intersections. There's a nice intersection here. You can see this. It cuts between those two, and building it up until we're convinced, this cuts through here nicely, until we're convinced that the marks that we've put on are the right marks in the right place and they're going to stay. So just dots and dashes as we go round, building up our picture there as we go through. I keep on doing that. That eyeball comes into the side of that line until I'm happy that I've gridded out enough information, and then I'll simply take the eraser and rub out the grid lines. The eraser I'm going to use today is a putty rubber, and literally it is a putty rubber. You can knead it into different shapes. As you knead it, it kind of self-cleans as well, but it means that you can make it into very fine, sharp lines if you want to get rid of very quick little bits without disturbing the rest of the picture, and it picks up rather than pushes around. You can use a very standard eraser, and I often use these and I cut them up into different shapes and sizes so I can get some very clean, crisp edges as well. The eraser we try and use only when really necessary, because all the marks that we're making here are useful to us. They tell us about where things are. Even the wrong marks tell us where the right mark should be. So as long as your marks are I've actually made these marks a bit darker than normal so you can see them. As long as they're little dots and dashes and very light, they're easily erased. But actually, as the picture grows, those marks will just become absorbed into the whole picture itself. So that's gridding up. And I'm going to take this down and move on to the map method, the mapping method. So I've already started on here to save time on here. So I'm going to try and do this in about 15 minutes and then do a time lapse for the rest of the picture. So as you can see, what I've done, I've drawn a cross. Now that cross is this. It's right down the centre of the face and through the middle of the eyes, you see there. So that gives me a very good start to where things will be. The eyes will be on that line, the nostril and the mouth and the centre of the chin will all be on that line. So I can take that from the centre here. I know that the distance between these two eyes is also the same distance as the eye itself. So I know that there should be a third across there. So I can start putting little marks and dots. Let's go sharpen the pencil. This is a B pencil I'm using, so it's quite soft. So a little mark here, that's the same distance there, a little mark there. It's a kind of a square that happens here with the bridge of the nose and the top of the eyebrows. You can see that kind of square shape in there. I come down again and see where the nose comes down to the bottom of the nose just here. And then we've got our lips. So there's some proportions here. So very roughly speaking, that distance from there to there is the distance from there to here. So below the nose to the chin is the same as below the nose to the eyebrows. There's half and half there. And that again is there. So there's a whole third. So there's a third, and a third. These are rule of thumb proportions. Each face will change slightly. And as the face grows older and develop, so a child's proportions will be slightly different to an adult's proportions, but they give you a rough sense of where things should be. Also, if you look in the corner of the eye here and take that line straight down, you'll see it intersects quite well with the corner of the nose here. So you can take those down and put them in, knowing that they will intersect with the nose where that's going to be. The eyes coming here. So you start just literally going across. I'm just looking little marks, and I'll start, I know that's a third rule here, and I'm going to start looking. There's a triangle shape here as well. You can see that triangle shape. So keep looking on your picture here for little shapes, squares, oblongs, whatever shapes they are, to help you know that when you come across to here, it's the same. So you've got about a half an eye again across to the edge of the face here. I'm just going to trace that down here with my eye across. There's an intersection here, so we're looking for intersections are really helpful to know. That's where one line meets another line. That comes down here. This line here, the ear. So the ear, if we take it across, is the level with the bottom, the middle of the mouth here. So that's another way we can do that. And that'll come in here. And as I'm feeling more confident, I'll make the marks a little bit darker. Still dots and dashes as we go through. There's hair here, there's a headband. So she's got hair, and there's a headband behind. But with the chiaroscuro method, we're really going to focus on this area here. This is going to be in sharp detail. Everything else around here is going to be out of focus. So that the further we get from those things we want people to be looking at, the less detail and the more out of focus it will become. That way the picture will keep sending you back to the area that you want to look at. And primarily, so much of the picture is told us in this eye here. So you'll make sure that this is eye. It's really nice and crisp and accurate and clean. So with the eyebrows, so very fair hair, gingery hair, so it's very light. So it's more about the shadows than actually seeing the hair itself. And you see that I'm just kind of moving around. As I do the hair, I suddenly saw that hair up there. So I wanted to jump up and just, there's a nice curl here I want to put in later on. When we come to do the curl, the hair later on, we want to treat it as if it were solid and not made up of lots and lots of strands. If we try and draw all the strands that we see, quite often we make it look very flat, like it's a wig or something. And to try and keep it looking really three-dimensional, we treat it as a three-dimensional object where the light's hitting it. So this here, for instance, there's light hitting here, so it's light there, and there's darkness here. So we just block that out. And then later on, we'll choose certain areas that we want to just put a little bit of detail in to show that there's actually some hair going on there. But because we know that's hair in that place, that should be hair in that place, we can also let our minds fill in the gaps, which is the great thing about sketching. You don't have to sketch every single line that you see. You just want to give the lines that are going to tell us what we want to know, and also the most interesting ones. So here's the ear. I'm just going to pause here and put the ear in. And again, I'm just moving around, so I'm kind of mapping this. As I saw this line here, I was drawn to that shadow on the neck coming down here, which comes just over there. And then we've got the t-shirt, which when we come down to draw the t-shirt, I really won't be spending much time on that at all, because it's not something I want people to really be involved with or look at. I want to keep on bringing people back into the picture here. So it's going to fill in a little. I'm very confident now because I spent a little bit of time beforehand. And don't worry about this cross line, we can easily rub that out later on if any of it is actually still remaining by the time we get there. So just going to fill in some of these lines. I'm probably using a little bit faster than I would normally go, just to get as much information as I can before our time is finished. This side, much darker, so you can see from the chiaroscuro method that these shadows here are telling us a lot about the nose and the shape of the nose and the eyes, simply from the shadows that they're creating. So I'm going to move soon to my graphite stick pencil, which will help me just to very quickly block out some of the key areas. So that's there. Big area here. Let's get this nose right, so it's a little bit of time on here. Now the nose, hopefully people just won't be looking at the nose. The nose is one of those things And you see it in cartoons, where, especially in contemporary manga anime cartoons, where the nose is simply just a little squiggle. Because the nose tells us very little about the character of a person, whether they're angry, sad, happy, about the emotions. And so quite often we just ignore it as we look at a face. We don't actually try and take in the nose. And this is something particularly unusual about it. And so as we do our faces, we kind of just want to make sure that our eyes acknowledge that there's a three-dimensional nose there, but that we don't really take more interest in it than that. Because what we want to do is look at the things that are telling us a lot about the emotional subject here. Whether the person is smiling, laughing, or just actually what's going on. There's a really nice light in the eye, just reflected here and on there, which we need to pick up later on. And the smile, so the smile on this subject here, my daughter's photo, is quite an enigmatic smile, which we need to make sure we capture. So the lips are very interesting in that, because they're chiseled in and out, we're very confident that there's going to be some shadow there at some point. And instantly we can see that that helps us make it more three-dimensional. Now the lips only draw the lines, and they put the lines in, that are actually there. We're very tempted, because we know there's a nose, we know there's a lips, to actually put in lines which actually don't exist. So I'm going to start putting my pencil on the side here, because I'm going to start just blocking out some of this area of shading. Following here, so dark. Now I'm kind of working from where I see the centre of the darkness out, and my pencil's getting lighter, so, and I'm not doing it the full darkness that it should be, because I'm going to build that darkness up. I do not want to have a shiny drawing. And even the best of us still create shiny drawings in our efforts to try and make things dark, and if we're in a rush. Try and avoid that by just very gently putting on the graphite, letting the pencil. So my eyes are keep on going between the two. My pencil hasn't left the paper, it's still moving. And I'm training my mind to give my hand the information it needs, even if I'm not paying attention. So my eyes are going backwards and forwards, and doing it almost without me thinking about it. The eye is actually very dark in there. Comes in, there's some shadow here which I want to put in. So I'm going to be looking at, so we look at those tonal qualities. I'll just show you another picture here. This is the same photo with a computer effect on it. And as you can see, it's blocked it down into very simple elements. And so we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those are those 5 tonal qualities that we looked at today. So 1 is all shine on this side. There's some very dark there, but the 5s, there's some 5 here, 5s there, 5s in the noses, 5 just on the bottom of the lips, and 5 around the side of here. The rest of it's kind of a 4 around here, some 4 here, 3 2s. Okay, so this is what we're trying to try and do with our eye as we're looking at, to find these tonal qualities on here. One of the easiest ways to do that is actually just squint your eyes up at the photo or at the model, the subject that you're working with, and that will help break down. Suddenly you'll see that you see the tonal qualities a lot easier. So I'm very quickly going to sketch this out because I'm aware of time and I want to move on with some of the other details. So I'm just very quickly block out some of these areas around the nose here. Under the nose, these nostrils is always usually a 5 because there's no light getting in to the nostrils unless you're uplit. So that bit of shadow here is very important because it tells us the three-dimensional nature of the nose. We've got a shadow just on here, which is probably about a 2 or 3. And as I'm doing this, I'm suddenly aware that some of this is smudging. So the secret weapon is to have a piece of paper that you can put under your hand so that when you're putting on the graphite, you're not ruining the rest of the picture that you spent so long on and smudging all the graphite around. So there's a 5 in there. Under there, shadow here. So lots of the very dark 5s happen on this side. So I'm just very carefully blocking this out. Start giving me an idea of how the structure of the face is looking. And because this is a layer which is very light, you won't see any of these lines later on because I'll be going over them. Some hair here, and then underneath here is a 4, tonal quality 4, coming into, there's a shadow going right across there. We can pick up some of those folds later on. There's a shadow which is very important to tell us all about that smile. And the cheeks here, cheeks and the shadow on the cheeks again tell us about the smile, because the smile is pushing the cheeks out and therefore you see the shadows on them. There's a little bit of shadow on there and some darkness in here. Okay, so we're beginning to see something of the form, the three-dimensional nature of what's going on. I think quite soon I'll move across to a time lapse so that you can see me developing the picture. Just to fill in some of these areas, and my hand is going backwards and forwards, up and down, moving around. And in a little while, once I'm convinced that the areas I've got in are the right areas, I'll move to a darker pencil. So this is a B. I'll move to a 3B, I think, and carry on. Just keep on moving around, trying not to spend any time too much on one area, because what we want to do is to keep the whole face looking at the same level of completedness as we go through. If we do one eye and just spend all the time on that eye, it will throw everything else out. So as much as you can, try not to be drawn into any one detail for too long. And the other part of the drawing is to make sure you actually kind of stop, get up and walk away about every 20 minutes or so, just for a minute, just for a few seconds, and that will really help you to have an objective eye when you come back. And here we are at the end. Thank you for joining me on this portrait masterclass. I've built a web page which houses all the information that I've been sharing with you on this masterclass, and there'll be information for Curious Guru links to find out more and the materials that were used. Once again, thank you very much for joining me today, and I wish you all the very best with your own portraits. Good luck.